On today's podcast, I'll be interviewing Callie Cavanaugh. She'll be sharing innovative wellness insights for creating connection and impact in your life and business. Callie has spent over a decade owning and operating a number of businesses within the holistic food and healthy lifestyle industries. As an innovation culture expert, she helps organizations, senior leaders, and teams transform from challengers to leaders by igniting innovation throughout their culture. I'm excited for you to meet my guest, Callie Cavanaugh. Welcome to Discover WellBeing. I'm so happy to have you as a guest and as a friend.
Oh, thanks, Allison. It's so wonderful to be here and chat with you. I'm really excited.
Callie, would you be kind enough to start all of us off on your definition of well-being and what it means to you?
It's such a wonderful question, thoughtful question that I think we could spend the whole podcast on. So I will do my best to keep it brief. My feeling of well-being is a balanced, intentional life. So that would include mind, body, spirit, all being balanced in a holistic sense. And when those things are balanced, then we can show up really as our whole selves, right? And to share unique abilities and joy, expressions of life with the world.
Oh, I love it. And especially in your definition, it allows us to move into the roles that we have, the relationships that we have, and that sense of wholeness allows one to move and to express and just connect on deeper levels and allow ourselves the grace and hold that for others as well.
Most definitely. What is yours?
Yes, it's actually very similar in the sense of looking at our life as ourselves and life as whole. Like there's nothing to fix, that we have peace of mind, we have strength and flexibility of body, and a resilient spirit. And I think it's really about the capacity to feel and to source and live, love, and lead well from within.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Okay, thank
you. Thank you for asking me. Yeah. So today we're exploring the conversation around wellness innovation. And for you, it might feel like a term that you use and people that you work with are really familiar with, but could you elaborate on the term and the work landscape and how you bring that to life?
Yeah, most definitely. It's actually, I like how you asked what is well-being, right? First, because it's very similar. Once we actually have that balance, then we are more in tune to really, it's really our intuition, right? That felt sense, that inner knowing, and that drives innovation. So whether that's innovation in our well-being, so for a while I was a food coach and choosing what kind of foods to eat and who to eat with and where to eat, all of those different things can be driven by that felt sense and that inner knowing and intuition. And so the same applies when you're creating something new. If you think about Steve Jobs, that's probably what he was driven by. We think about those types of individuals, Einstein and Steve Jobs, as these luminaries, but we all have that ability within us. It's just a matter of essentially recognizing that, fine-tuning it like a muscle, building the muscle. And so I applied that kind of process to creating new things and bringing new things to life with specifically other companies at this moment.
In terms of innovation, was this just a young discovery that you had? Wait a minute, I am creative, therefore everyone else is creative, and then let me develop and connect and source from that place?
I was in like gifted art class and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I was kicked out because of some politics on the parent end at a young age. And that actually stifled some of my creativity. So where I found myself creative was actually in the kitchen. And that was really where my creativity came to light for a really long time, until I started opening up other channels of it and realizing that it applied to all these other modalities and domains. And that I did always know that we all had that, but I didn't exactly know how to cultivate it. And especially when I shut that down from being kicked out of gifted art, right? That having to reintegrate it into my life and celebrate it again allowed me to see that we all have that ability.
100%. Did your parents influence you and support your curiosity in the kitchen? What was that like?
Yeah, I they were really great. They saw it as something that was really fun for me, and I was just really passionate about it. Normal kid at 5 years old is gonna be asking for an easy bake oven or not something related to food at all, new pair of roller skates, whatever it is. I was asking for a KitchenAid mixer, like the real stuff, because I was already using the oven. I would put on these cooking shows before the Food Network was a thing, like on this an island that we had in our kitchen. And I would have my friends and family, mainly my family, right, sit and watch me cook. And I would turn it into this show. And there was a lot of like weird humor that I would integrate that was pretty funny. I honestly wish that I had it on tape. I think it would be pretty amusing, but they were really wonderful in holding that space for me. And they would actually eat the food that I would make, which was, to be honest, really not edible. It was not edible. It looked really beautiful. That was my favorite thing, to paint the plates and that kind of thing. But they were troopers in eating some of it, trying it, and yeah, celebrating it most definitely.
So, Callie, your container, your family unit was supporting you, whether you were able to stay in the art class or not, you continued to pursue. So, what was the next stage?
Yeah, my love of food was definitely front and center. And so I actually the one thing that was interesting when it came to creativity and celebrating food in the kitchen when I was younger, my parents were all about it. But when it came to applying that for work or a profession, that was out of the question to a certain extent. Like it was like I was going to business school. That's how you made money and that's how you survived in life. So that's what I did for undergrad, and I lasted about a year and a half until I realized I really needed to go to culinary school. It was one of those things. I like called my mom at 2 a.m. and was like, "This can't work," you know. So I transferred and I got a bachelor's in food and beverage management, but that allowed me to kind of get into the food world and explore there and see how the industry was running, which was not, I wouldn't say that was exactly aligned with the way that I thrive in the world. It's a lot of like later nights. It's really fast paced. It's really hot in the kitchen. I'm like a ginger redhead that doesn't sweat. Like I overheat. So none of the things, and I go to sleep at 8 p.m. So none of it made sense to me. And so I actually went back to school and got a master's in strategic communication and design, which is like user experience and design thinking and branding and all these cool things that totally transformed the way that I thought about the world and like solving problems. It's really about a new way of thinking and approaching life. So that sparked my creativity in a whole different way. And I started to, once I again apply that to food, and I started my own business in going to people's homes and cooking for them. Once again, like I had to do all these trial and errors to figure out what worked for me. But I realized that wasn't the right line of work either, because all of a sudden I found myself essentially, you know, being an event planner, and I'm really good at planning, but that's one side of my brain. And then the other side is the creativity. And that's where I really thrive. So I ended up then getting into food coaching, really helping people have a much deeper relationship with their food. And this was after some personal health challenges, gut related for myself. And I realized how important not only the taste and the look of food is, but also the quality of it and how we eat it, the mindful component and that sort of thing. And then it wasn't until really last year that I got out of the food world just by accident. Like a friend came to me and asked if I could help him bring a new product to life. And that's easy for me. That was an easy no-brainer. And I realized that creativity and why I was trying all these different things is because I love to create new things. So as an entrepreneur, that's a beautiful thing, but also a double-edged sword, right? Because I'm always trying to do something new and it's hard to stay in one place. So where I am right now is essentially helping people or groups or organizations cultivate innovation within themselves and then bring something new to life, but giving them the guidance to then continue to do that on their own, because it's a mindset and it's approach. And yeah, I don't even know if that answered your question.
You did. I think you collapsed time. It must have at least been a decade's worth that you collapsed. I'd love to break down the food coaching because of all the coaching titles. I haven't heard of a food coach.
Exactly. Thanks for asking. I think I made it up. And I made it up as I went along to a certain extent because I food was the thing, as you can hear from this story, that was my source of creativity, was my source of innovation. And if I wasn't eating well, and if I wasn't eating slow, and if I wasn't eating with other people, it was this holistic approach to me for me and the source of my life. And if I wasn't doing that, then I wasn't able to create and produce and have a high performance. I don't mean that in a striving way, but like a flow state, right? Food was like the base level of creating a flow state in my life. And so that's what I wanted to share with others. And I also, my original intention was to really share this creativity that I have with food with others, which that wasn't really how it was translated because a lot of people they don't even go in their kitchen, right? I realized how terrifying food is to a lot of people. There's body image, right? There's a lot of beliefs set in childhood around food and around what you should be eating. And especially in America, it's a pretty tough landscape. I think most of Americans are really growing up on processed food and they don't even actually know what eating whole food is. So even that educational journey for people was wildly interesting to me to see where my clients were starting. And then where we got at the end was this celebration of food and really eating intuitively because we're all very different. So it's about understanding our own bodies, right? Some of us might have sensitivities to food or intolerances. And so I encourage my clients to work with some sort of professional to understand, get some blood panels and understand those things in a cellular level. And the thing is, a lot of those things actually do change over time if you eat well, like your gut will transform, right? So if you can't eat bread or gluten right now, eventually you might be able to, right? So it's this constant checking in with yourself, but there's also there's a ton of emotions that go into food. And when we get in an anxious state, a lot of the time food kind of gets wrapped up into our emotions, right? So it's that fight or flight response. And some of us will go to not eating, right? And then others will go to overeating. And so there's this whole process of awareness and understanding where those emotional processes started in our life and then starting to transform those. And it takes a long time, but I watched a lot of my clients do some amazing work in those areas.
Wow, how rewarding as someone who's able to break down and illuminate the areas that are truly programmed within us,
Yeah.
right? The natural fight or flight relationship to food and comfort and what it does to satiate and to give that, yeah, that sense of comfort. Were they able to name what type of relationship they wanted to have?
Yeah, I would say the relationship, like we always start with a vision. And so that vision would morph over time. A lot of them would come in and say, I want to lose X amount of pounds or something like that. And by the end, they're like, wow, I actually feel maybe I've lost some weight, but I actually feel beautiful. There's this inner connectedness that we created. And so the vision would shift from that external, I need to lose weight, to I want to celebrate food with my family. This is the role that I want food to play in my life. I want to connect with the earth and the land, farmers and people that are cultivating my food, or the animals that are producing my food if they weren't a vegetarian. So it was really cool to see how that would shift. And because a lot of the time I would challenge their vision in the beginning of when they were setting it, but they wouldn't even a lot of us we can't feel that connectedness with food if we have to get somewhere to feel that, if that makes sense. We have to grow into that through working through those emotions. And so they weren't even able to connect to that or get excited about that until we would get a little bit through the process. So that was some of the most exciting things to see how that would shift and the life that they were able to essentially manifest and bring to life through food.
As weight loss is such a hot and or sensitive topic for most, will most people latch on and name the extra weight that they've been carrying and that's what they want as the goal? But to your point, it's the feeling of how you want to be when that weight is released. And what is that going to give you? Chances are greater energy, and everything is running at an optimal level. And your perspective is where it all begins, seeing things differently. The kitchen, the cabinets, the dinner table, who's there, who's supporting you. Because at the end of the day, we all want that sense of well-being. And it doesn't have anything to do with how much you weigh.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you'll naturally start to release the weight because you're not holding on to the angst of a number. You're the author of Eating In by Design. And so was your coaching experience what inspired you to write the book so then you could reach more people?
So the book was actually written. So talk about innovation and creativity. I think this had been brewing within my being for a long time, right? It honestly came through like I had this big event with my company prior, which was about creating intimate dining experiences. And we created this branded event that was really beautiful and awesome. And the people sat at the table for 3 hours, right? But they walked away from that experience that was mindful and connected and tasted amazing. And right, they connected with people at the table and the food, and there was art and music, and it was really cool. But they left, and I was like, wow, I think there's no addition to that event. That's a one and done. And so I left, oh my God, the impact that I want to have is so much deeper than a 3 hour meal. And that was glorious and beautiful, not to discount it, but like, how can I continue that support with such people if they want it? And so after sitting with that, the first thing that came through was like, you need to write a book. And I'm like, what? It was one of those things. And I'm like, I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. That sounds like a lot of work that I don't know if I want to do. I let go of all of those fears and doubts and things. And I wrote the book in a month. It was a kind of a crazy process. So the book was a thing that kind of set the tone for the coaching and all the other things that came after it. And it was more like, here are all of these steps essentially to create that new relationship with food. And so that went from everything that we've been talking about and the emotional, and also like the high quality food, where to source that, how to source that, seasonal, what does that even mean and how do you do it and why does it matter, to also a little bit of an Ayurvedic approach to a certain extent, but also like back to your kitchen and making it, how do you organize your kitchen in a way that makes it really easy to cook? Because I would say to friends, like, why aren't you guys cooking every night? To me, that was my meditation. And obviously, I had been doing it for a long time, so it comes easy to me. But it took me 15 minutes to make a meal, where it would take them like 2 hours. And so part of that is how you store things and, right, making it efficient to make a meal. So there's a lot of information in the book. And so that was like the resource guide, I guess, for my clients. And also just like part of it was just for me to get it on paper. And here's this Bible of really awesome information to guide who knows what. It was really the intention.
I track with you. I eat intuitively and I cook a meal, and I sometimes use a recipe I want to try. And I do cook a lot of Ayurvedic things that are seasonal. But for you to make the statement that it takes people 2 hours to make a meal, I'm a bit confused. And because maybe there are listeners out there having the same struggles, what tips or insights could you maybe name in addition to having an organized kitchen? Because time is so precious.
Yeah, it's a hard one to break down in simple steps like that because everyone is different. So some people, it will take them that long because they're actually going through a period of almost like procrastination because they have so many like blocks or obstacles that were created from their childhood. Either they don't know how to cook and they're trying to get through that. Either there's something in the sense of food that they have real fear around food. So they could be like literally resisting nourishing themselves. That a lot with some sort of eating disorders or disordered eating, right? But it's really hard to even have that awareness of yourself if that's going on. So you're just like, oh my God, it takes me 2 hours, right? Whereas if you get down in the nut and bolts, like it's very easy. But to get to the nut and bolts, there's a lot of other things that come through. And there's also the planning of your meals, the shopping of your meals that people also procrastinate on, or they don't even think that they need to have food in the fridge, which sounds funny when we're talking about creating a meal, but they don't have the mindset that they need to be prepared to make their meal in advance. So making a meal involves planning, going to the grocery store, cooking. They have to do all of that, which that's 4 hours when you include the cleanup and right. So it was illuminating. It sounds like, Alice, we're on the same page there. It was illuminating to see and understand and gain the empathy of the reality of the culture of food that we have in this country and what it's created for people.
The schedules that we all keep, especially those with young children, I remember those days. And I think we pay for the convenience. And I didn't see it as not liking to cook. I know there are some people that enjoy cooking more than others, but I see it as we've got this much time, and restaurants have come so far in terms of the options that we have for a meal that's nutritious for ourselves and for our children.
Most definitely. And the convenience is the excuse that 99% of the population will use, right? So exactly. But underneath that are all these other things. So I can give you all the tools practically to do something, right? And that's
Yeah.
what I learned through this process is that's where I started with it. And then I realized like that was nowhere near enough. People were not doing it with those tools. It's a much deeper process.
Wow. Well, I just congratulate you in the exploration and the development of taking on the book, the larger impact that you want to make, and serving others when those things aren't available as being a food coach anymore, because I know you've shifted into other things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like I said, the shift was someone asking me to help them with a project, and then it's led to a whole different realm of work. So it's interesting how those things sort out, right?
Do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I had all this experience really starting different businesses. And the fact that I could create a book and essentially self-publish it within a matter of months was probably it's a little bit crazy when I say that out loud, but it's easy for me to produce something. And so I see once again there's a lot of emotional resistance when we're trying to bring something into the world. We have to walk through a lot of fear and doubt and all these different things. And there's that component for people, but I have this unique skill set, and I think we all have it, but I've honed into that like love of creating new things. So that's where I helped a friend, first kind of client, and then that's evolved to now helping CEOs and actually them launch innovation initiatives within their culture. So at first it was really helping them set a vision of how to bring new things to life within their company. But I soon realized I could do as much work with the CEO, and that'd be wonderful. But if they're working with a team, if it's different if it's a solopreneur or something along those lines. But if they're working with a team, that top down approach is not effective, right? It needs to be a top down, bottom up. Everyone needs to be in alignment. So I created this framework. It's called Peace, Purpose, Ease, Align, Create, Expand. And so it's really about getting aligned with your why and your purpose. Simon Sinek did such an amazing job really sharing the beauty and the research behind why is so important, right? But that why is that feeling in your body, that intuition that drives really every decision and that innovation. And so we connect that with each individual within the organization, really starting with the CEO, setting a vision, right? And then teams within the organization really come together and use that to drive innovation to move forward. So they start bringing ideas to life really pretty effortlessly, because when you're backed by that why, as Simon talks about, right, so eloquently, like that's what motivates you, right? That's the meaning behind everything. And so everyone wants to get on board all of a sudden. So what we're doing is not popping ideas out of thin air. It's actually, there's solutions that are already within the organization and the team that are just being uncovered. So once everyone gets aligned to that, then they get to start acting on that together. And so that comes forth with the ease, the align, the create, the expand is really the framework for this more intuitive process. I'll just say it's really getting in touch with your inner knowing. So solutions, it's what to pursue, right? Whereas if you think about a solopreneur is, I think, one of the best examples, because I was one for so long, and there's so many ideas you can do and so many ways to get somewhere. It can be overwhelming. You don't know where to start. You could do all of the things and get super burnt out. But if you have an inner knowing that's aligned to that why, you become incredibly more efficient and effective in what you do.
The gold is within, in the person, in the company, and it's a system. And it's okay, everything is already here. We can just choose to let something go if it's not working, like mindsets or attachments to projects that were born out of a season, and then it's no longer relevant. And I think that's the beauty when you have a CEO that is willing to take this innovative approach and crystallize something, but let it emerge through the people that are actually the creative beings and the ones that are putting it into action.
Most definitely.
I would imagine that is what fills in the framework.
Yeah, you need the vision and the implementation, right? The strategy and the execution. And so the people that are executing it, you can either just tell them what to do, and that only goes so far, right? But if they start generating it from within, then you're creating a sustainable approach that they're gonna start to not only listen, respect, embody, right? And so it's gonna go 10 times more, like the effectiveness is tenfold, right? I saw an example of that as one of my clients, one of our first conversations, we don't have any processes as much in the company. Everyone's just doing it, but I think we're losing effectiveness in that process. So she spoke with her team prior to speaking with me that they want to hire an outside consultant and bring them in to set those processes so everyone can follow them. Long story short, we worked together for about 6 months, and after we started the team process, and the team as a whole saw that the lack of processes was a problem, and they started creating them on their own, and now they're following them to a T, and right, it's expanding, and they're teaching each other. And so it's just an example of that they will take responsibility and authority for each of the things if it's generated as a whole.
Yes. And what I also hear you saying is that structure gives everyone freedom.
Yes.
It's not an oppressive thing. It can be, but for people to have the autonomy, I think is number one. And they begin to trust is established in the team, because then they're starting to vocalize their ideas and everybody's getting feedback, and not all the ideas are going to be great, but knowing that it is truly a collaboration and that we share the same why, the same vision. And so how do we each play our part? But I appreciate you saying structure, because the way my brain works is that I love structure, and I also love the freedom and the creativity and the innovation. And if I had to choose, it would probably be on the other side, right? On the ladder, just live in that space of constant creativity, because it does light me up. And I see, going back to the why, is that this is allowing everybody to move into the future vision more easily, right?
100%. And I love that you brought up agency ownership, because I think that's one of the things that teams struggle with. How do you cultivate that? And a lot of the time we think about it, well, as a CEO or a executive leader, like we just need to tell them to own it. We need to tell them what to do, and we need to tell them to own it. And it's like, that doesn't work. Like you said, it's generated from within. And so as you cultivate that as a team, they get to rise above to the occasion. They start going above and beyond, and taking ownership it goes beyond ownership, right? They're leading different things in ways that you couldn't have even imagined. And it's really cool to see. The other thing, we started this about wellness innovation, right? So that's also amazing to see when there's a brand or an organization that's fostering well-being as part of their mission, as part of their innovative strategy, right? And so you can have, let's just say, a building that has a beautiful spa and all these different things, but it's a shell, right? And you need to bring that to life. Like the people, it's the same thing. The people within that shell or that organization also need to be feeling the why of wellness and well-being within themselves. They get to generate that and take ownership and accountability and agency of their own well-being and the well-being of their team. And therefore it's felt within that shell is no longer like a shell. It's, it's come to life, it's illuminated, and you feel that just stepping in there. And so that's something I know we speak about that a lot, given your expertise and on the topic. And that's one of the things, given my journey with food, that feels super, super exciting, and talk about aligned to support people, not only in innovation, but innovating on wellness and helping others. Supporting that is super worthwhile.
Are you currently working with a brand that is maybe looking at something they've never done before, whether it's in hospitality or elsewhere, that they're like, no, we want to incorporate wellness innovation that's going to complement the other initiatives that they might be working on?
Most definitely. I have a project. It's actually a random group of people that are coming together around a vision, a collective vision. And so there is a wellness component that they haven't really looked at before that actually ties all of the other parts of that vision together. And it feels like that's the glue to a certain extent, because there's this big problem around mental health, as we all know, the challenge that many of us probably experience daily or come in contact with. And so how can we utilize multiple things to support wellness and to support people's mental health, right? Is for the specific project, the example. But through doing that, then you set a whole different bar and foundation for innovation to flow, right? Within that whole ecosystem.
The wellness industry, for wellness real estate, social wellness, hospitality, that is truly putting well-being or wellness in, this is our DNA. Everything else, like you said, it's either the nexus or the mycelia, it's the life force.
Yeah.
And because everything else is very business, but we need to also be in the business of, like I said in the beginning, living, loving, and leading well. And if you show up knowing that your company is reinforcing what you want for yourself, it's that natural outflow of then giving back to the company, giving back to your team, because you too are being fed. So thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else that I haven't covered that might be relevant to either personally or professionally that you want to illuminate?
It's a good question. I guess the only other thing I would mention is my experience in Italy. I studied, worked, lived there for a little bit in relation to food. And that was the thing that kind of changed my whole relationship with food. And because it wasn't about, in America, it's a lot about counting calories, whether we know it or we don't, right? It's about healthy, quote unquote, healthy eating. But in Italy, it was people were eating pasta, and that felt healthy because it was a healthy group of people you were eating it with. You were eating it over the course of 3 hours, beautiful setting. You knew where the grains for the flour and the pasta were made and the tomatoes were grown. And it was all within their community. Maybe those people were sitting at your table. There was something like so transformative about the simplicity and the beauty of that experience that I'll never forget. And also feel like that is my vision for all of these different things that we bring to the world, is that exact feeling. And I think what you just illuminated, that care within, is then we can give that to others. It's that same feeling. It's not like one thing, it's a collection of things in the environment, and can be, that kind of example can be applied to really any setting.
So where people can learn more about your work,
Yeah, you can check my site. It's very simple. It's just calliecavanaugh.com, CALIECAVANAUGH.com. I know that can be a confusing one to spell. I also write randomly on Medium and different sites. It's more, once again, that's more for me and just like a creative expression. Some people, I don't know, some people like it. So that's why I'm sharing it. But that's the main place you can find me.
And is your book still
My
available?
book, yeah, that's on Amazon. You just can search Eating In by Design, and that should pop up pretty easily.
Having you on the podcast has been a joy, and I really just appreciate you sharing your story, your genius, and how others can be inspired to endeavor into their kitchen, into their workplaces differently through a wellness innovation approach. So thank you, Callie.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. It was such a pleasure.
Are you enjoying Discover Wellbeing? If so, I would love to hear about it. Leaving a review helps more people find us and really makes a difference. So share your thoughts on Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform. Your feedback supports our show and helps spread the message of well-being.